What is up, my loves? Welcome back to another episode of the Fully Alive podcast. My name is Stephanie Elsperman. I am your host today, and this is the space where we dive into all things activating and finding your soul's purpose so that you can take action on your desires and truly create a life that makes you feel fully alive from the inside out. Whether it's the mindset of high performers, spirituality, impact-driven business, or honestly just taking action in your life, we cover it all. And I'm so beyond excited to have you here for a very, very extra special, near and dear to my heart episode where I get to have on my partner, Nolan Sponsler, the man, the myth, the legend, and absolutely phenomenal artist. If you all haven't seen his work, I tag him on Instagram all the time, but his Instagram will be linked in the show notes. Not only is he a just truly, truly talented craftsman and jeweler by trade, but he is also one of the most caring and kind-hearted humans that I know, and somebody who I'm very, very lucky to get to love. So I'm excited to have him on. We basically share the inside details that we've never fully shared on the podcast. You guys get my perspective a lot, but now I bring in the other party. And so we go through everything from how we met to then our relationship journey, all the way through separating and coming back together. And then we also get into how we keep the spark alive in our relationship. We live together, we collaborate and work together at times, and we run businesses all under one roof. And it can be a lot to hold. And we share with you kind of our ins and outs in our own process with everything. This was a really big deal for us. We actually we've known each other for 6 years. We've been dating for 5 years. And I am more so of somebody who likes to share. I mean, come on, feminine beings. We like to talk. We like to chit chat. And Nolan's a very private human being. He is an artist who really prides himself on mastering his skill and growing himself and his own personal practice. So sharing everything kind of out in the open. Of course, there's a lot of things that we still keep to ourselves, but sharing things out in the open was something that he was warming up to for a really long time. And so for me and my heart, it was the greatest honor and blessing to get to have him here and to share my space with him, and to share us with you all. So without further ado, I won't give you too much more context, but thank you all for being here. I'm excited for you guys to get to see this just raw, unfiltered conversation where we get into it. So with that said, let's head into the podcast episode. Welcome.
We're live.
We're live on the podcast. Nolan Sponsler is here in the flesh.
I'm here.
You situated?
Oh, there's too many pillows. All right, there we go.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
He's here. I finally brought him into the podcast studio to be here, aka my office, to be live for this episode where we are going to get into questions that I have from my community. There's a few from your community as well. And they want to know all the things. They want to know about our relationship, about business and life, and all the things in between. Thanks for being here.
Of course. It was quite the commute for me.
It was quite the commute.
I made it, yeah.
Beautiful. I'm happy to have you here. It is an honor. Tell people who you are. What's your name? What do you do? Where are you from in the world? Give them like a little context.
My name's Nolan. Live in Connecticut. Have a jewelry store. I make jewelry for a living. And I have a wonderful partner. And what else is there to know?
What's it like being with the coolest person in all of the land?
It's amazing. Tell you what.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Aside from that, and I'll probably say this in the intro, so this might be a repeat, but Nolan is one of the most phenomenally talented craftsmen that I've ever witnessed. He is a jeweler. He is not only a jeweler, but a phenomenal businessman, and overall just a human being with one of the greatest, kindest hearts that I know. I'm blessed to know you. I'm blessed to get to love you. And let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
All right. So the first question that people are dying to know that we're going to share is, how did we meet? What's our relationship story? There's like a whole bunch of parts to it. I feel like it's not just a super straightforward answer.
That's a long story, but I'll try to summarize it.
Let's just start it from the beginning. We can give the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first time we met, it was in passing at a friend's house. We both happened to be going to say hi to her at the same time, and you'd gotten there just before me, and
I was walking out and he was coming in. We met in the doorway.
Yeah, there we go. And you were describing how the reason for your visit was that it was your last chance to see your friend before going on a 3-month excursion to Southeast Asia. And not only were you going halfway across the world, but you were doing it completely by yourself. You don't speak the language. And you said you were going to teach English or something while you were there too. I just thought that was the coolest thing. I had never heard of anyone doing that at that point. For a single woman of that age to be brave enough to venture off by herself for 3 months to a totally foreign part of the world, I thought it was extremely courageous, and I distinctly had the thought, that is the type of woman that I want to be with. So that was my experience. I think for you just met me and didn't think anything of it after the fact. And I didn't think, oh, this is who I'm going to end up with.
Isn't that wild though? It's mind-blowing. As you guys hear the rest of the story, it's pretty mind-blowing that you had that thought. And I met you, and I don't think I was really in the place to be able to, I wasn't even thinking about relationship or honestly partnership in any sort of way. I was just going off and doing my thing. And so when I met you, you were also with somebody else at the time. So in my mind, it was just like, oh my gosh, like this very handsome man who's walking in and he's with somebody else. So it just was like off limits in my brain. But I remember thinking, and the reason why our mutual friend was just completely hyping Nolan up, being like, oh my gosh, you have to meet Nolan. Because at the time he was working at Jared, humble beginnings, and making these
silver peace sign earrings.
They were like just bent wire in a piece. I thought they were the coolest thing, and she was wearing them. And I just remember thinking it was really amazing to meet somebody who was doing something different, who was around my age. And that wasn't super common in St. Louis, Missouri. So you did have an impact on me. And I also thought you were incredibly handsome. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to leave. So we met that time. And then many months go by. You do your thing. I traveled.
I was doing my thing. And as I continued to grow my business, I got all my, and this is before I had any business at all. This is first sale ever were these peace sign earrings. So it was right at the beginning. I didn't even have hardly a shop set up. I had started acquiring hand-me-down equipment from a jeweler who was retiring. None of my equipment was new. I didn't have the money to do anything serious. I was just doing what I could. By the time that so before we ever reconnected, I had started doing these reverse intaglio carvings on crystals. The first one I did was an owl, and then the second one I did was I carved a lion.
Which were really cool.
They were cool. It was just the beginning of my lapidary journey. Lapidary is stone cutting, for those who don't know. I went to a local metaphysical rock crystal shop to try and put my work in there on consignment. And while I was there, this blonde woman who did energy work there walked in and we immediately connected, and she just thought it was so cool what I was doing. And I thought it was cool that someone else thought it was cool. And we just hit it off and we became friends. And months later, forgot about that. And then months later, there's an event at that store that I tried to consign my work at. and it was a speaking event from our mutual friend. Of course, I go to support her, and what do you know? Stephanie's home, and she's at the event. And then, of course, the blonde woman who works there was also there. But
it sounds like a love triangle. So
you'll,
you guys,
you'll see.
The blonde woman.
Anyway, it all makes sense here soon. So me and Steph started talking at the event, and we exchanged Instagram, and that was the beginning of us having some sort of contact. And just through social media, we would send little stories to each other.
When we met, I go up to Nolan. I recognized you and I knew who you were, but I didn't want you to know that I knew who you were because I thought there was no chance that you remembered me from that quick moment in passing. And so I show up to this event not thinking like anyone's going to be there. I go there for this friend and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the man. And so we start talking. I go, oh, it's nice to meet you. You go, we've already met. And I go, oh yeah, we've already met. And then I just remember my hands shaking as you started showing me the carvings that you were doing. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I was talking to you about the circles that I was holding, it was called Soul Circle. And it was basically like a donation-based circle where we talked about spirituality and personal growth and all this stuff that I was leading at the time. Again, before either of us had businesses. And Nolan, he was the first person who was like, oh my gosh, like that's so amazing. There's such a need for all of that. And to find somebody who was interested in that stuff and just was overall supportive. I didn't have that really in my life at the time. I had some girlfriends here and there who were like really into it and thought it was super cool, but not just somebody who like just met me and was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and I think that created that connection. And then not only that, but then I felt your eyes. So I remember being so drawn to you and being like, that is a very handsome man over there. There was just something about your energy where I felt so drawn in. And then I felt this intensity from your eyes. And it was whether you were looking at me or it was just you and your Scorpio eyes.
I was definitely checking her out.
Okay. So I had that.
You're very beautiful.
So there was like something there. And then can I share the part about my mom?
Sure.
Okay. Spoiler alert. The blonde woman ended up being my mom. And the day that my mom met Nolan, I will never forget. She comes home. She's so excited. And she goes, Steph, you have absolutely no idea who I just met. I just met my new best friend. And she'll hold that to this day. She goes, I just met my new best friend. There was the coolest guy up at this place. And he makes these incredible carvings. Like, you have to see this. Like, he carves these owls into quartz. And and she starts showing me all these pictures. And I'm like, hey, Mom, that's really cool. Whatever. And she's just so hyped about it. And then it turns out at this event that he was the guy. So we made that connection. My mom will always claim that.
But at this time,
she felt the connection.
But I still had no idea that was your mom.
Yeah.
Because you guys don't look very much alike.
No,
she has blonde hair, you have brown hair. Yeah, it's
not similar.
Yeah. So more time goes by. You go off to learn your yoga teacher training. I go off to further my stone cutting skills. Mm-hmm. And then I go to the Philippines, and we FaceTimed once while I was in the Philippines.
We did.
Yeah, you got to meet my Filipino family.
But we hung out first before that.
Yeah, so okay, sorry.
The first meeting.
Yeah, so the first meeting
How that happened.
Steph slid into my DMs and said, "Hey, I have this ring that the stone fell out, and could you put it back in, or could you glue it in for me?" Okay.
I was trying to play it really cool.
Right. Of course, I told you no, and don't do that. Bring your ring over, and I'll see what I can do to fix it. Well, she comes over, and my dad answers the door, and
we were both living with our parents at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Very beginning stages.
Starting my business out of my parents' basement, and my dad answers the door and sees this exotic woman here, and whoa, who are you here for? You're here for Nolan? No way. But yeah, so she comes over. I see the ring. It's crumpled up into a ball. I don't know how she destroyed it so much. I still have the ring.
He keeps it on his desk.
But there was no fixing it. So instead of fixing it for her, I ended up making her a new ring. And instead of her paying me for it, I gifted it to her, and we hung out.
We knew.
And then we just kept hanging out.
Yep. That was like our hangout. We were friends for hangouts.
Yeah.
And then I think the third was when we went on an actual date.
Yeah, that's true.
There was something so interesting, and you wouldn't have known this because it was on my side. But when the stone popped out, I was teaching yoga one day and it fell out. And I remember that feeling of my stomach dropping, being like, I have to say something. I can't not have this like stone fall out and not reach out to a jewel. It was like the universe being like, all right, you guys have to, like, we have to bring you together somehow, because neither of us were going to do that. I think we were both just in this phase of like, I was really into my own personal growth and development.
All I was doing was working on building my business.
Yeah. And just very much in our own spaces. And I was in the season of what I like to call my 6 months of celibacy, where I was just like completely focused on myself and not really looking for a relationship. Previously, I had set the intention of the universe only show me somebody who can make me grow and expand in ways that I cannot do on my own. And I remember once I started like seeing your stories and the things that you were into and the personal growth that you were into, I was like, oh, so this is somebody who's actually going to make me grow and expand. And the ways that you were pursuing your interests and building a business and creating content on social media, I was like, okay, so there's something there. And so then when the stone popped out, I was like, oh God, okay, I have to do something. I have to actually make
And I'm glad you did.
Nolan was super chill. And yeah, and then we met.
So that's how we met.
Yeah, and we hung out and we shared our life stories for about 3 hours and just went in.
Yeah, and we really connected right off the bat. It wasn't like fluff, and
there was
it was just straight into meaningful questions, not just like shop talk.
Yeah, it was deep.
Yeah, it was getting right into who are you really, and what are you doing here?
I remember when we first met, it was like for the first time I didn't feel like I had to perform or show this specific side of me. Mm-hmm. Like you have an intensity. I remember walking away from our first date. I was so intimidated because you have just this natural intensity about you. I can feel it right now as you're like looking at me, where it feels like you're like looking straight into my soul, which I love about you. But I remember being so de-armored by that the first time that we met, because I'd never had an experience where somebody wanted to get to know me on that level and hear my full story, and then not only hear it, but also then you had your own, and your story is phenomenal, and I can't wait for the day where we get to share it here and share more about how you got into the work that you got into, because it's a really incredible story. But I knew when I heard that, I was like, okay, there's somebody who's been through some stuff in life and who has a strong purpose, who has a strong why. And I was like, regardless of if this person is actually into me, because I didn't know. I had no idea if you were.
I had to play it cool. I thought
you did a good job of playing it cool.
I thought you were incredibly attractive and in many ways, not just physical. Mm. And yeah, but I also wanted to take it super slow, and I have a tendency of, when I'm with somebody, I'm with them. Yeah. Like it's my person. And maybe I wasn't mature enough at that point to hold somebody. Mm. And I definitely wasn't even when we met still, which is why we split up. Mm-hmm. I still have ways that I needed to grow before I could keep and attract a person of your caliber. Love you too.
But I felt that in I keep describing it as an intensity, but it's like you Scorpios.
I'm just on a mission. I know what I need. I knew what I need to do.
But I knew that once we met, of course I was like, yeah, I don't know what this is, because I think that was part of me protecting myself. But on some level, you were very clear. Like I remember the second time we hung out, or maybe it was the third. I can't fully remember. No, I think it was the fourth.
That
it was
very
after
clear.
Our like first official date.
That was one of the most. That was period of my life where I could say, the most clear I ever was, because I just, got myself together a couple years, and things really started looking like it would work, and things started falling into place. My why was very strong. I had strong whys for everything that I was doing in my life at that point, and I think you could feel that, and that my mission wasn't wrapped up in relationship. It was wrapped up in a greater thing. But having a strong, fulfilling relationship was part of that too. So
see, I think that's really interesting, because I hear a lot of stories from people where it's like they'll meet somebody, a man who's very into his purpose, his why, but isn't necessarily also then holding space for a relationship, right? They're like on one or the other. And what I find was really interesting about you is that you were so like, I have never questioned that your purpose honestly comes before a relationship. And I think at some point that might shift and change as we have a family and a future and everything. But I knew that from the start, that was the most important thing, because you were preparing yourself for the rest of your life. And at the same time, though, I also felt the sensation of like, when I met you, there was no question of like, where does he stand on who we are and what are we doing? You weren't looking for a situationship or anything like that. You were just there, fully present for me, and still holding your why. And I find I'm the luckiest human. But it's something I really respect about you, is that you had been preparing yourself for a relationship, yet still following your purpose.
Yeah.
Did you feel like those intertwined for you? Like you were consciously thinking about it, or it's just who you are and how you operate?
No, it's just a result of doing things right. And I've had a lot of help along the way, right? Like I got to start my business out of my childhood home, and my overhead was very low. Like I had a lot of things helping the entire idea succeed, right? It's like you have the idea, and then you have to behave in a manner that it will actually come to fruition, and it did.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, so this was when I finally started. We were hanging out enough to where you invited me over to your place when you were living with your mom at the time. Then I walk in and to meet your mom, and it's the blonde lady that I became friends with before, while you were in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Which is just so wild.
Yeah.
How out of all the people in St. Louis, I meet and connect with your mom, and not knowing that's your mom at all.
It's pretty wild.
It blew my mind. So that was the point of why I was saying blonde lady, because no, it was because it was a mind-blowing experience to realize that like this is your mom.
Greater.
Yes.
It was pretty wild, the synchronicities that happened that were like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I'm sure there's many more that we're not touching on.
So many different instances. But the last story I'll share is on our fourth date. On our fourth date, we went to, I think it was like the first day after we had our first kiss. And we went to go get food. And when we were there, we were still in the very beginning stages of getting to know each other. I still felt like somewhat nervous around you. I still do to this day. And we walked in and we sat down and we started talking. And you're like, yeah, I have this incredible opportunity to move out to Nashville. And at that point, I was like, oh, okay. This man is going to follow his dream out to Nashville, because there was a school out there, a school for jewelers, and he had a really awesome opportunity to work as an apprentice. And I was like, all right, this was cool. It was cool getting to know you. And I thought that was his way of being like, okay, I'm going to go off. I didn't understand the extent of Nolan and his just loyalty. And I don't even know if loyalty is the right word. But you were there and you were with me, essentially. And so then he was like, I'm thinking in my head, okay, nice knowing you, cool. And then he's, yeah, so it's only like a 5-hour drive. And I'm thinking like, you can totally come up on the weekend. And I go, oh, okay. So I guess that he's here and he wants this for at least the long term in that moment. And that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, okay. And then, yeah, from there, we ended up doing long distance for 5 months. It didn't last very long, maybe 8 months.
Yeah, I think it was 8 months. But after 8 months, I moved back home because I wasn't making enough money working there to even pay my rent.
Mm-hmm.
So in my free time, I was cutting stones and continuing to build my business while apprenticing. And after 8 months, I I needed to just focus on my own business at that point. So I moved back home, back to St. Louis.
Back to St. Louis.
And it wasn't long after that you moved in with me, and we just built our businesses and supported each other.
Yeah, and that was, I can't wait. There's a part of my brain that's, I can't wait for you to share your full story of like how you got into jewelry, because there's so many different like pieces and stuff.
So many long podcasts.
Yeah.
But we'll do it another time.
But when we moved in together, it was really like a catalyst effect where we put our heads down and we got to work. And of course we spent time in our relationship, but that was really the time where both of our businesses took off. And I just remember like getting to celebrate every single win with you, and you just being the greatest supporter of everything. And really, like, I think what's interesting, because I have a lot of clients or people in this community who are like, I feel like I can either have one or the other. I can have a successful relationship or I can have a successful business. And I will always say, like, never underestimate the power of a supportive partner. And I think the only reason, maybe not the only reason, like one of the reasons why it worked really well is because you have always been the greatest person empowering me in my work, and vice versa. You have always loved the mission and the drive that I have, while still loving me just as I am and not needing for me to be like that constantly. And I personally feel like that's one of the reasons why we had this catalyst effect, and still to this day have this catalyst effect every single time we get around each other. What do you think attributed to that catalyst effect?
I was not in a time in my life where I needed somebody holding me back or just taking up energy,
Mm-hmm.
because I needed that to propel the business. Because in my eyes, I was with you because I want to build a future with you. I want to have a family. I want to travel. I want to be able to retire with you. There's so many things I'm thinking about, and in the short term, if I'm not focusing on what's important, which is building a viable business that can allow for all these things to happen, then it's just taking energy from me, and and then I'm not moving towards my goals. By knowing that you were also working on building your business, but we would come together, we would consciously come together because it's important to us, and having a relationship is important. That it wasn't ever, oh, you're working too much and you're not showing me enough attention. It's like we lived together, so we would find moments to be present with each other that didn't take away from our purpose, our work. So
I think that's, to me, one of the greatest gifts is not having to explain those parts of myself or yourself. Of course, there are nights when you're working late where I'm like, I just want to hang out with you.
Of course.
Because it's fun and we love it. But I know Nolan works most Saturdays, at least nowadays. And even back then, sure, we'd take weekends off. But I think one thing that is the greatest benefit of having our own businesses and really being in our purpose in this world is that we love creating and we love getting to play. And I remember being in high school and creating business plans on the weekend. It's just part of who I am and what I do, and what's fun for both of us to talk about business ideas and to build things. And so there is just that inherent understanding where you don't necessarily have to explain yourself or bend to fit this mold that I have of you, and I don't either, which it's such a blessing to not ever have to explain myself. So thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. We're together for about almost 2.5 years. And then we got to the place where we felt called to, we had grown so much together. And then we felt called to to grow in other ways as well?
I had an opportunity to,
go.
So I was ready to leave St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
There's something else, something needed to switch up, and I found myself considering moving to Northern California to open an art gallery with a couple of my friends, gem cutting artists, colleagues. And to me, it was like, oh, this is the time where we could move out there, live in this beautiful area of the country, and continue to build our businesses the way that we have been. In my situation, I had many friends already there that were going to move and open the gallery. STEF didn't have anything for her there at all. She has no community, and that's a big part of her work. Maybe a great place to settle down, like maybe 10 more years from now, but just wasn't the right time. And there were things that I needed to focus on because I was saying earlier, trying to merge business and relationship can be difficult, and especially when you're in a phase of life where you're trying to grow your business into a stable place.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't there yet. So I really needed to focus my time and energy in that. And I think Steph saw the bigger picture more than I was willing to let myself at the time. So I moved her to Denver on my way to Northern California and dropped her off. And we broke it off.
Yeah.
And we were still just completely in love with each other. It didn't make any sense to either of us. I mean, it did make sense, but to my ego,
it didn't make sense.
I didn't want to, but it was necessary and needed to happen. And although I felt quite lonely out in Northern California, mostly because there was only 70 people in town, maybe one my age. I don't think there was a single one my age, but needed to happen.
Yeah.
And through us separating, I built the business I needed to. I made the relationships I needed to. I did the things I needed to do, which probably wouldn't have happened, or just definitely would not have happened the same way had we been in partnership.
This man went to work.
Yeah, I didn't even hardly do any exploring of the beautiful
Isn't the
landscape.
Most beautiful part of the country.
I'd go for walks at lunchtime around the area, but I didn't go to the Redwood Forest. There's so much I didn't do. I didn't even go skiing out there. It's just in my work mode. And Saf and I were making really cool art pieces together, and it was a great time. And opportunities opened up, like this opportunity here in Connecticut.
Yeah. I think it was really interesting because, to Nolan's point, it didn't make sense. Like us breaking up, and I've shared previous podcast episodes where I go through the full story on my end, so you can always go back and listen to those for the full picture of the behind the scenes. But it didn't make sense to you somewhat made sense to me because I was in touch with my own intuition and my own psyche and side of things. But like from the outside looking in and from your perspective, it didn't fully make sense. Yes,
but at the same time, after having gone through, it forced me to step up. Because if that was truly what I wanted, that was the type of woman I wanted to be with, and you were the person I wanted to be with, then I needed to step up in these ways. If I ever wanted the possibility of a woman like that to be in my life. Yeah, so I
damn did it.
I stepped up, and what do you know?
Here we are. He has a way of getting everything he wants. But one thing I really honor about you during that entire process is that it didn't make sense. It did not make, and I knew that it wasn't going to make sense. It was the hardest thing because I knew that we needed that full and clean break for our own growth. I didn't necessarily fully understand why, but I also needed to go through heartbreak. Like I had never, like Nolan is the first person that I was really seriously with. Like I had situationships and things like that, but like nobody who I was fully committed to. And I knew also for my own piece that if we were going to have a relationship long term, that I also needed to go through heartbreak. I didn't want to, and I didn't like deliberately be like, I need to go through heartbreak. Let's check that box. Okay, let's break. Like, it wasn't like that, but there was something in my soul that was like, okay, there are just things that we need to work through. And this is where it's like, I swear our relationship is something otherworldly, where it's like our souls have come here for some form of a connection, for some form of a learning process that I'll never be able to fully understand. Yet somehow we've gone through all these different phases of life together, which I think is amazing. And looking back, and I think something that I'm just now processing, even in the last probably year-ish, is that I think on some level my soul recognized how intense this relationship has the capacity to be, in terms of longevity, in terms of commitment, in terms of merging lives and really letting myself be fully and completely seen by somebody else. And I personally, I think I needed the time, like the year and a half that we were broken up, or I think it was just a full year that we were broken up, but I was in Denver for a year and a half, and needed that time to almost prepare myself for the next level of vulnerability and merging, because I wasn't at that place. I was very focused on my own vision and what I wanted in my own life, rather than what we looked like coming together in partnership.
Yeah, and that was just an example of shows where our maturity level was. We've come a long way since then, and things just continue to evolve too as we start to create a mutual vision of the future. Whereas back then we both had our own separate visions, and we were creating those together but separately. But now we're working on creating something together that's the same.
Yeah.
So
Just really vulnerable on some level.
Yet
natural.
Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah. I love that. So Nolan got to work. I played a whole bunch. I also got to work. I worked my butt off, but played a whole lot. And then eventually we got to the place where we were thinking about coming back together. And that came completely out of the blue. Again, I have previous podcast episodes describing my whole process back into that. But it came out of the blue, and I ended up showing up at the Tucson Jump Show and surprising Nolan.
I knew you were
what
coming.
What did you think?
I knew you were coming, but you made it seem like you were coming a couple days later, and then you just showed up at my Airbnb. Totally surprised me off guard. It was amazing. But
yeah. And how did you feel like you had changed as a man from the time that we were together to that time?
I definitely felt like I'd grown a lot, and I definitely did. But then also seeing you again was like, am I prepared for this?
Yeah, what were the questions or apprehension, or I wouldn't say fear, because I don't think it's fully fear, maybe doubt on some level?
Yeah.
Or like, what was going through your mind during time?
It's just uncertainty, and I emotionally take this again, and are you in it for real this time? Am I in it for real this time? What's going on here?
Yeah.
But things were getting serious in all different ways. That was when I revealed to you that, we just finally saw each other again after a year. And we're hanging out. Oh, by the way, I'm moving to Connecticut.
This is the second time that this happened.
Yeah, where I sprung Nashville on you, and then now I'm springing Connecticut on you.
Yes, I have an opportunity to move to Connecticut. I said, Connecticut. Okay.
Yeah. Longtime family friend who's made my parents' engagement rings, grew up with my dad, and went to college with my uncle. He was retiring. He had an amazing business out here in Connecticut, a really beautiful historic home built in 1770. And after I came and visited, it was just a no-brainer. I had to come take it over. And at the time I had written, I still have the note in my phone. about my definite chief aim, and that was to build a custom jewelry business. And then I wrote it down in November, and then by March of the following year, I had a store,
So
a custom
crazy.
jewelry store.
Everything you say happens.
Yeah.
And then we're here.
So somehow that convinced you to come.
I thought we were thinking about getting back together. I was like, oh, maybe he'll move to Denver and we can, because you had community
I had a
in
lot of
Denver,
community in Denver.
and
Still
you still
do.
do, or Arizona, or further out west. Like that, in my mind, that was, where we were headed. But of course, the universe has a way of giving you everything that you didn't know that you needed.
Yep.
And so we ended up moving out to Connecticut. And I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're just going to do it. Like if we're going to get back together and we're going to really see if we can do this for the long term, we're just going to fully do it. And so I was terrified to move myself all the way out here. Were you scared to move me into your house, or did you just know? Like, did you just know it's done?
No, we're doing it. Yeah. It's happening.
I love that about you. Yeah. And so now we live together.
Yep.
In Connecticut, and we run 2 businesses under one roof.
Indeed.
Not only that, but we also have a storefront. Nolan runs an entire jewelry storefront out of one wing of our house that has been there for 30 years and continues to grow. And now we're here.
Yep.
So one of the biggest questions I actually got multiple times is that we are living together. We also collaborate together in work. That's something that we've started doing, where I support him with systems and some social media stuff here and there, but we really just collaborate on overall ideas, and building a vision together is the biggest thing of like, how does this work and how can we be each other's biggest supporters? But how do we do it? How do we live together, collaborate together, and still have a relationship together?
It's all intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all part of it. And I think part of the one of the most fun things is that we've integrated it all. Mm-hmm. So the things that you're good at, you do the things that you're good at, and I do the things that I'm good at, and it all supports the whole.
Yeah.
And also, business can be stressful, so the stress from business can blend into the relationship, but also when you win in business, it also blends into the relationship. So it's all part of it, and it's the way that it's fun that way, because it's fun to work together in a shared vision through business, because that also helps our relationship. It's fun to work together.
How do you think that helps our relationship? I really want to break it down, because I did get this question so many.
Because you're good at the things that you're good at. And the thing, if we were both good at the same things, it may not be as beneficial.
Yeah.
Because the way that your brain works with organization and setting systems up, and your sales capabilities, all of your different skills are different than the way that my brain works. Mm-hmm. I'm naturally just creative with kind of design, and good with working with my hands and thinking logically and seeing the big picture. Mm-hmm. But you're good with seeing the big picture and then setting business up properly to support that vision, and so many other things.
But I think that's the key, like what you're speaking to is like, it's not like we sat down one day and we're like, these are my skills and these are your skills. Actually, I do think we did that at one time.
We've done it before.
Yeah, we have actually.
Yeah.
I correct myself. We did do that one time. But I think we naturally have a level of respect for one another's genius. And I've always known from the minute that we met, where I was like, I will never understand how your brain works. Like, people come into the store and they're like, oh my God, I'm just in awe of like Nolan's work. I'm like, yeah, me too, because I will never be able to do it. I will never be able to have the vision that he has. I will never be able to have the same design capability, and how he's able to just mold things into these beautiful works of art, and the way that you connect with people, and you just have this way of everybody loves you when they meet you, and you just connect with all of these different people, and you do it so naturally, and you make people feel seen and heard. And I could go on, but I respect your genius so much, knowing that mine is different. And I feel like that's key for so many relationships. It's a lot of the time I expect you to be like me, and that's my own fault. And that's me setting myself up for disappointment because you're never going to be like me. And in fact, I love that you're not like me. But I think in a lot of relationship, like we expect the other person to be into every single thing that we're into or be very similar. When in actuality, it's if you want to be the type of people who work together, live together, and still keep the spark alive, there has to be that mutual respect and honoring. I honor you for your genius and you honor me for my genius.
Yeah, and that certainly keeps the spark alive. When I'm getting help with things that I'm not good at, it's such a turn on. So
is that the best?
Yeah.
I think that's what's so wild. And like when I see you, I always go back to this, like when I've gotten to witness you giving a talk, for example, like Nolan just gave a great presentation at the Tucson Gem Show, which was a really big honor. It's a big deal, even if you don't hype it up. It was a really big deal.
It was a big deal.
And to witness him like instructing others and how he guides people and talks to them, like for me, I'm like, oh, that's my man. Like it's the sexiest thing about you. No, there's many sexy things about you, but it's one of those things. So they all, when you say it's like they're intertwined, it's like they really are all intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah. One specific question on that was that, and this is new for us. So we have now bridged into sharing our worlds a little bit. So sharing our industries, sharing our communities, and more so, like, for example, like I travel with you to certain conventions that are really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I make a point to meet the people that are important to you. And we don't do as much travel for my business, but I know like eventually we'll continue doing those things. It's just a really big thing in the jewelry world, but we've bridged into sharing our worlds. I mean, you're even on the podcast right now, which I love. How has that been easy for us? Because sometimes I think in relationship, people are like, I have my thing and this is my safe space and you have your thing and that's your safe space. How has that been easy for us to share our worlds?
I think naturally we both are representing each other. Mm. And you're, very easy for me you make me want to bring you around people because I think that you represent me very well. And I hope that you would feel the same way about me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Just being proud of your person.
Yeah, I'm just proud to be with you. And I want people to meet you.
I love you so much. And it has made me feel so honored and loved in a way that I don't think I've ever experienced before. Just the fact that anyone you meet who's important to you, you're always like, oh, I want you to meet them. I want you to meet them constantly. Yeah. Because you do have so many different connections. And that is the first thing. If there's a client that he thinks is really awesome, it's like, I want you to meet them. Or if there's an event, he's like, I want you here. Not that there's ever any pressure. You fully give me my own space because I'm very introverted.
For sure. And there's plenty of times that you say no. So it's fine.
So let's talk about that piece, right? Like would you describe yourself as extroverted?
No, but I am when I need to be.
Yeah. When it comes to a social event, you usually are the person who
I'm not afraid. Everyone. I'm not afraid to go meet people that I need to meet. Yeah. That's the thing. I'm not intimidated by anybody. Mm-hmm. And I'm not afraid to go talk to people that I think would be a beneficial relationship. But I'm also not trying to force anything. Any relationships that I've made with people are simply because we connected and relate in some way. When I meet people like that, of course I want to introduce you to them.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a man who's gone to a concert and then made friends with the band just because he went to go and talk to them. When I look at myself, I'm like, I'm way more introverted than that. So I'm going to give you credit.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to meet the band? That's one of my favorite groups.
You're really good at that, right? But you also know that I am a sensitive little being.
A sensitive being.
I'm a sensitive being. And I'm not always the first person who's, I want to go to everything.
Totally.
I very much have my boundaries.
You're definitely, if we were doing a scale of extroverted and introverted, I'm way further extroverted than you are.
So we have that kind of difference. And I think for a long time, I put pressure on myself. People, most of the time, at least in my own personal experience, people have typed me as being extroverted. But when it comes to my energy, I'm very protective over my energy and how much time I spend in places and what's a yes for me and what's a no for me. That's very...
Sure.
And you've honored that so freaking, because for a long time, I felt like I needed to be the person who was at everything.
I've also dragged you out to things, and I've seen how it's affected you, and I've seen you get your body, the way you'll just immediately get sick if you do something that goes against your gut. And I've seen it happen. So I'm not, I've just learned over the years, when you have a strong feeling that it's not for you, then I just don't push it. And it works.
I appreciate that. Last piece I wanted to touch on was what you were saying when you said that sometimes stress can bleed into work, stress can bleed into life and our relationship, and then vice versa, wins can also bleed over as well. How do we manage that in our relationship, and specifically in our communication, how we treat each other?
If we're going to talk about stress, we do things that help mitigate stress. So we go to the gym and we meditate and we do things that are good for that, because there's no avoiding stress when you work for yourself, or work in general. Just being alive, you're going to feel stressed. So you got to have outlets to relieve that and not let it affect other aspects of your life too much. There's a reason for it. And there's a healthy reason for it.
We go to dance class.
We go to dance class. I would say that's a way that you help keep the spark alive. I think that was one of the questions. How do you keep the spark alive? By doing new, novel things together and learning and getting better at them together. Yeah. It's fun.
It is so fun.
So just something as simple as going to dance class and learning salsa. Most guys absolutely will not do it. And but it's like with anything. You don't do it because you're not good at it, and it's uncomfortable to do something that you're not good at. So, but if you were really good at it, it would be a lot more fun. So you just have to get through that stage and suck it up and do new things together. Just because they're uncomfortable, it starts to get a lot more fun when you start to get the hang of it.
Nolan for president.
Nolan for president.
So I do want to bring it back to the question around communication. So there are times when we're talking to each other and maybe there's like a tone in our voices, or maybe we're snipping about little things that like usually wouldn't bother us. And the stress can bleed over in that sort of way. Or we can get, frustrated about something that really isn't about the other person, but it's more so related to this like work stress or something that's going on in your life that's outside of your control. It doesn't even have to be work. I think that it can be anything. But how do we work through that?
Sometimes we just need our space and allow ourselves to work through the emotions before we actually interact with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll honor about you is that you have a really wonderful way of just owning your side of things. And I try and do the same as well, where it's like when we catch ourselves snipping about something or getting frustrated about something okay, this really isn't about the other person, or it feels like it's about the other person, but it's really actually not. I think we have a good way of catching ourselves and being like, oh, actually, it's because of X, Y, and Z. And usually that only happens when we take a second to go back into our own spaces, and usually in a matter of 5 minutes. And you're so good at it. I'm working on getting even better at it. You're so good at being like, babe, I'm sorry. Like it was actually about X, Y, and Z, and just owning that. And then we can move forward from that place of what do you need for support and what do I need for support in that instance.
Totally.
And to show up as better supporters. I think that's one of the intentions I've personally set in our relationship. In the end of last year, but also just going into this year, is like, how can I just be a better supporter of you and of the human being that you are in this world, especially as we work and we live and we play together as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything you want to add to it?
No.
Okay, cool. Anything else you want to tell people about working and living together?
Yeah, part of the reason I started my own business from the start, when I'm talking about that I had strong whys when I started this business. A strong why. The whole point of me being an entrepreneur, wanting to be with a partner who's also an entrepreneur, was that we wouldn't be tied to going into the office for 8 hours a day. We could have our kids around, we could still work, but we could also still be teaching them and making sure that they're learning the things that they need to learn, and all that. And that was really important to me. So I know that all this stuff that we're going through is just us learning and working out the kinks. There's no roadmap or blueprint that somebody could lay out in front of you for how to have a relationship with two, entrepreneurs. It's like, okay, where's the blueprint for that? I wouldn't have it any other way, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to learn and grow with you.
I love you. I think a huge thing to note is that we are in the stage of our lives where we get to be very selfish. We are in this place where, we're set in Connecticut. It's not like we're looking to move in the next year. We are starting to build roots, and we don't have a family yet. We don't have family around us. It's just us here. And we go out and we do things for fun, and we're building community here. But it really is just us here in this phase of life where it's like, all right, let's fucking go. Let's create, let's build, let's do all the things that we want to do while we have all of this time and we don't have to worry about responsibilities or kids. But I think that every single day we're actively, I laugh to say we're actively preparing ourselves for potentially what that looks like in the future between, how we set up systems around the house, how we have boundaries with work and life. We are still thinking about the future. And I laugh because I'm like, of course, if we are fortunate enough to have a family, when that time comes, all of our systems and everything that we think we're preparing ourselves for is not going to go according to plan.
Yeah, but that is also
that's
also the importance of having these systems set up so early on, so that we're prepared for that stuff.
Yeah. And working
and
together
not that you'll ever be fully prepared, but when the time comes, I'm gonna step up to the plate, hit a home run.
That sounds good. And just being a team, I think that's something for me. And I don't know if this is biological, I don't know what it is, but most of the time things in our relationship, I'm always looking at, well, how does this relate to if we were to have a family in the picture or something like that. And one thing, when we have disagreements, or if work does get into life and our relationship, for example, and again, we're just using that as an example of stress, it could be anything. But when that does come in, one thing that we always try and remind each other of is we're a team in this.
Yeah, exactly.
We're a team. Are we fighting against each other to create more separation and just, righteousness in our own egos, or are we actually coming together to be a team? And yeah,
absolutely.
And we ask each other if we're willing to build a bridge.
Yeah.
In this instance, or do we want to stay in our own sides?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. So last few questions here. You may or may not have an answer for this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So one of my previous podcast episodes recently was about being too much.
Okay.
And that's something that I notice in conversations I have with clients or in my community. A lot of people are I'm afraid of being too much in relationship, too much love, too much sass, too much play, too much drive, too much energy. And that's something that I've worked through along my life because I've always been a lot. But you do such an incredible job at loving. I've never questioned if I'm too much in our relationship. I know that you love me for me. You can say if I'm too much here if you really want to tell the truth.
Sometimes. But
but how do you handle that and celebrate that in relationship? And what would you have to say to people who feel whether it's men or women, who feel they're too much in relationship, or that they have to hide certain sides of themselves to be palatable?
Yeah, I mean, if you're over the top, I don't know I need to understand what too much.
He really doesn't even know what too much is because it doesn't exist in his mind. When I'm wake up and I'm I want to do these 5 million things.
I see. Yeah, I get that. So
I have a lot of drive or a lot of energy.
For example, you're very high energy in the mornings where I'm more like slow to get up. And sometimes that can be too much for me. So what I just say is I need my space. And we've gotten to the point where when I say that, you give it to me. And it's not much. It's maybe I need 30 minutes, maybe I need an hour or two. And then I'm back.
And then you come back and you're fully present.
Yeah.
And that was something I had to get used to because I want to get up and go. And I have all these million different ideas. And I'm sure many high-performing women can relate. I have so many ideas of what I want to do, what needs to get
great.
done.
But I've got millions of things going on in my head that I have to get done. And if it's a time that I'm in get shit done mode and you're being too much, I need you to go.
That's just you to leave.
Yeah, it's not that I want you to, but this is not the time.
Yeah, it's not the time. But what I also, we one time had a team meeting.
Got a number of those.
We've had a number of them where we kept having this tiff in the mornings, like on weekends and things where I would want to get up and do things. Nolan doesn't operate in that same way. He needs time to recharge because you've been working hard.
I need time to recharge.
Time by yourself. For him to constantly be with me would be, it just doesn't work. And versus typically the feminine is a little bit more comfortable being in the world and being amongst a lot of things. And we just want love all the time. Now, I, of course, need my time completely by myself. And I think we do a good job at having that separation.
No, there's times where I don't want to be doing any of that stuff. I want to be on the couch, nothing in my head at all.
And you just need that.
Yeah, and that's what recharges me, as opposed to what recharges you is going out and doing things that, that feel good to go for hikes out in the sun and stuff like that. Whereas for me, that would be draining at that moment.
Yeah.
So
we've had like different team meetings where it's okay, in this instance, what do you typically need? So for example, in the mornings, what do you typically need? And Nolan's like, I need a shower. That's just like time for him. He's like, I need time to wake up and I need to meditate, and then I'm good. I'm all yours. I'm like, okay, noted. So that's going to take you about, X amount of time. So then now I have that sort of gauge in my own brain of, okay, that time in the morning, I'm not going to ask anything of him. Like, I'm going to go off and do my own thing, and then we'll reconvene and, go to the gym, for example. So just like, I feel like we've had to open up a lot of lines of communication that.
Yeah. And not being afraid to just say, hey, I'm feeling this way now and I need this.
Yeah. Which I think is going to become like an even bigger player as
we're still learning I'm still learning how to communicate that, because to me it's like I don't want to say things because I don't want to burden you with shit going on in my head or whatever. And I think a lot of times that's valid, because I don't need to be putting my shit onto you when I know that I'll work it out within a day or 3. It's not your stuff to deal with. I'll carry it.
Yet it's helpful as a partner
to know that I'm going
to know
through that.
When things are feeling without the need to solve it. I think that's the thing that we're moving through and like actively bringing into our life is like, how can we share just how we are and how our feelings in a very true and real and honest way without then needing to solve it or feel like the other person, like you sharing is somehow burdening.
Or it's like, now it's your responsibility to fix it for me. No, I'm not asking for that.
But it is helpful to know.
This is why I'm aggravated.
Yeah, so that we can support each other. Otherwise, we don't know. Yeah.
All right. What will our relationship look like in 5 years? I imagine we'll be married. And not only will we be married, we'll be married in like a royal palace somewhere.
A royal palace?
You have no idea. I haven't even shared the juice with you that I learned yesterday.
We even shared the juice. What did you learn?
I have some friends who have access to some pretty magnificent places for us to get married. I'll tell you what.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned and
our wedding.
Yeah, looking for your invite.
It's going to be small and intimate.
There's going to be small and intimate, but we'll have plenty of room. All right. So we'll probably get married. We may have a kiddo. We may. It's 5 years, so who knows? If
we're lucky enough to be blessed, who knows?
Yeah, it'll be time, though. It'll be right around that time. We'll have just amazing, awesome businesses where we're doing everything that we've set out to do. And Yeah, life will be good.
Living life. Do you think we'll still be in Connecticut? If we had to guess.
Yeah,
You think so?
I think Connecticut is a great place, and I love being here, especially during the summers. The weather is absolutely beautiful here. But I think that we'll also have a second place that we do business
That's one of my
and
goals.
retreat to.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, we love Connecticut as a home base. I definitely need someplace that's warm. Nolan needs someplace that's warm. So that's one of my personal goals, is to have a
And
second
it'll be
place.
interesting figuring out how to create a business that doesn't tie us to one location, to being here in Connecticut.
I got that, baby.
Yeah, I know you do, but it's a lot different in my
Totally.
in my
I
field.
think that's always been the constant puzzle. Is Nolan is very location dependent. It's got to be a safe, secure location to be dealing with the highly valuable things that you have.
For sure.
And that's not something to fuck around with.
But there are safe and secure places all over the world. So it's just about figuring out where it is that we want,
Right.
that we enjoy spending time, and that feels like a place that we can build in the way that we want to build. And I'm sure
it'll be really interesting listening back.
And that's
to
the thing.
this.
We put it out there. That's something that we're looking for, and we hold that.
Yeah. Let's see.
And in our hearts, and opportunities will show up, and you just have to pick one or ride the wave.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting listening back, because as we've mentioned, you do have a way of anything that happens. Like, there's not a question in my body if that's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and how, that we don't always have full control over. We just have to say yes when the opportunities present and put in the work to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
But to look back on this, where it's like you and I are both very, very warm people.
Yeah.
Like, we need the warmth, and we need that. Nolan's half Filipino. And another question just popped into my mind. Anyways, he's half Filipino, and I just have always felt very connected to the ocean. We're near the ocean right now, but we're not in some place that's warm year round.
It's not tropical.
It's going to happen. I'm just like so curious of which place it's going to be. Anyways.
Yeah.
And what are we hoping to call into our relationship, just in terms of what we're working on in a more mental, emotional, spiritual?
Yeah. Just in general, deepening our connection and finding more things to learn and work on together.
Is there one specifically that you feel called to right now in our relationship to really deepen on?
Yeah, our communication, and that goes into how we can work better together in business.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's so many things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree on both fronts, like communication, and also I think what we said before around like supporting. How can I be a better supporter to you? And that goes in so many ways. Like, how can I communicate better with you?
Yeah,
how can I
for sure
support your gifts and empower you, rather than thinking that you need to be like me. That's another for sure huge thing.
And then also, how can I show up better for you?
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Just showing up. Yeah. And like really getting clear on what we want and what we need. And I think also then looking at how do our visions continue to merge? Because I think we're only at the very beginning stages of that kind of was like a thing. Me moving out here was like the beginning of it, but it really started to pick up in November, was when we really started to like be like, okay, what do we look as this more or less like power couple archetype? Not saying that we need to be that or are fully that, but it's just like that energy of like, I'm here for you and you're here for me. And how do we show up where a win for you is a win for me and a win for me is a win for you thing. And I think that's something that has been such a fucking up level in our relationship, and really been able to see how when he wins, I am fully supported in that, not even just through the win, but in the connections, in the relationships, in the richness of our life. And when I win, he is fully supported. And so when we create this ecosystem where both of our gifts feed each other and we're able to communicate through it, and it's not like I have my area and you have your area and that's just it. It's like we have a shared ecosystem that includes our businesses, it includes our strengths, our geniuses, and what we want to create together.
Yeah, and even includes all the relationships we have with other people and in our different areas of expertise. And yeah. And you have one more?
I've got some quick questions.
Okay.
What's our favorite thing to do together? You'll go and I'll go.
Make love.
Good answer. I'll say one that's different.
Should I come up with a different answer?
I mean, if that's the truth, speak your truth.
We like to go on hikes.
I love how everything else just...
We like to go on hikes. We like to have nice dinners together. We like to travel and do new things.
Mm-hmm. Pro tip, find a person who likes to do shit.
Yeah.
No one likes to do shit. We play. I feel like that's the biggest thing. I love that we're both competitive, and Nolan's really amazing at just wanting to go out and do things. So whether it's like going to the farmer's market or setting up games in our backyard and we play wiffle ball or volleyball, or I want to get more.
Yeah.
I want to get washers.
Yeah.
I like washers. Or like corn bocce. Yeah, we've got bocce. Yeah, so like just things like that, or going to the beach, or taking up salsa lessons. Like last year, we picked up pickleball, and we'll still go play pickleball. We play basketball. So many different things that we like just going out and doing together. And I think that's been really key, especially the fact that we don't know a lot of people here.
Yeah, and we need to get away from our work sometimes.
Yeah, so. To do something that's just... Sometimes dinner doesn't do it. Dinner is good, and dinner is beautiful to connect, but I feel like even sometimes in dinner, we talk about...
There's also hardly any separation because our kitchen connects to my workshop and it connects to your office.
Yeah.
So there's not much separation from work, just going to dinner in our kitchen. So
yeah, even going out to dinner too.
Yeah, for sure. But to me, going out to eat is nice because, I'm working all day. Then when I go to cook dinner, my mind is in trying to cook dinner. Whereas when we go out to eat, we can at least sit down and actually have conversation and not be focused on cooking, because sometimes that's what I need, just to hang out and talk with you.
We also like question cards.
We like question cards.
That's a really good way to break up the conversations that we have. So there's like, we love, what are they called? The Skin Deep.
Yeah, there's a few.
theskindeep.com.
There's a few different cards that we do.
Yeah, We Are Not Really Strangers, the couples edition. We'll take them out to the restaurants.
Yeah.
To inspire greater conversation rather than just, otherwise we'll probably end up talking about.
Otherwise we sit there and we just
business.
Talk about business or...
Because it's fun.
Or not. Yeah, or just hang out.
Or just hang out. And sometimes that's also nice.
Yeah.
Okay. What's our favorite meal to cook together?
Steak and potatoes.
Steak and potatoes.
It's mine. What's yours? Is that yours?
Oh, I'll add a different one because that's a really good one. I didn't eat a lot of meat before I met Nolan. Before I met you. And then you made me a really good steak. And he's ruined steak. So good. Steak and potatoes. I would say I love when we make sushi or sashimi at home. I think it's just so good. And what is our favorite quality about each other? I'll share mine first. I have to think about it. My favorite quality about you... My favorite quality, it's a tie between your willingness to grow through anything. I think that's why our relationship has worked in so many different phases, is because anything I bring to you, even if it's a lot, you'll always want to find a way to work through it. You're very malleable in that way where you're not like, yes, we both present as stubborn people with very strong visions and desires, but at the end of the day, you are always willing to show up for me. And you're always like, babe, how can I show up better? Anything you need from me, I will do it because I care about you. And so that kind of ties in with my second, which is that I have never once questioned your love for me. Just your ability to so fully hold our relationship and give so much love, just unwavering love, and to love all sides of me. It really, now I'm like, we're very lucky because I think there's a lot of love in our relationship, but especially in the beginning of our relationship, you completely revolutionized how I loved myself. I did not know that I could experience that level of love in life. I didn't think I was fully worthy of it until you came into my life and you reflected back what I was working on, but I wasn't fully there. you reflected back just the unconditional love that shifted how I love myself completely. 110%. It's still the greatest reminder. That's what I love about you.
I love you.
I love you too.
I think my favorite quality is your ability to connect with people, and yeah, just how you're able to get to the heart of whatever anyone is going through and finding the solution or the way to help them through it. Witnessed you do it over and over with all of your clients. I've never met somebody who is able to do that. Ever. Never met anybody with that ability.
My last question for you is, what makes you feel fully alive right now?
Yeah, I would say exercising, eating really high quality prepared meals, meeting really interesting people, and doing new things. That's what makes me feel alive. Learning new skills.
It makes you feel alive in your artistry.
Trying new techniques that I've never done. Doing things that make me uncomfortable. Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I love you.
I love you.
All right, my loves, that is what I have for you on this podcast episode. We hope that you truly and deeply enjoyed it. You saw us in all of our rawness, our realness, just us being human beings and talking with you all. So if you loved having Nolan on the podcast, let me know. You can reach out to me at Stephanie Elsperman on Instagram. Let me know what resonated with you, what dropped in, what stuck with you. It is always so wonderful to see your responses. And if you absolutely enjoyed it and you're still listening up until this point, it would mean the absolute world to me and also Nolan. If you left a review on the podcast, you take 2 seconds, click that 5-star review, let us know what dropped in with you. It helps us so much to be able to get this word out to even more human beings so that we can impact the world together. So with all of that said, I hope you all have the most wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next episode.